Guys, it happened. It is here. It is out now for us to consume. If you've been a regular listener of the show or a watcher of the show over the last 18 months, you'll know that I've been talking with the clubhouse leader in terms of appearances on the TUSC pod, the legend, the ABS, the Aussie boxing scribe himself, Anthony Cox. We've hinted and we've teased at an unbelievable project that he has literally spent 7 years working on. It is here, right there, guys. The Brawl at the Sydney Opera House and other Aussie boxing yarns, all about diving into the rich history of Australian boxing through the 70s and 80s. Guys, I've got mine. I can't wait to read it. It's just been released today. So when you see this, I will have already read it. We'll be talking about it on the pod. We'll get Tony back on the pod to talk about it. Don't worry about that. But it is available globally on Amazon.com for you to all enjoy. The link to the book will be in the description of this episode, so click away. And if you do, not only will you be reading and consuming a fantastic boxing-related piece of literature, but you'll also be supporting one of the best guys in the sport globally. So available now, guys, The Brawl at the Sydney Opera House and other Aussie boxing yarns.
Let's go and move with life. Let it go, something new tonight. Let's go and move with life. Let it go, something new tonight.
All right, well, here I am joined by current broadcaster and basketball reporter for ESPN, host of Nothing But Net, covering all things NBA, Boomers, Opals, and the NBL. From recently literally covering the NBA Finals courtside with Ben Stiller, of all people. One of the best young broadcasters in any sport we've got in this country. It's Kane Pitman. Kane, thanks so much for carving out some time, all the way from Connecticut, as you just told me, the other side of the world, mate. I appreciate it. So welcome and thank you.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable intro from you, so I appreciate that. And I will say this, you just mentioned the NBA Finals, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit, but I've done quite a few chats in my time in broadcasting. I have never got a request for a boxing podcast. So when you reached out, you did say this one might be a little bit left of center, but I was excited to do it because I'm like, this is different. And how often am I going to get this opportunity? Far from a boxing expert. In fact, I know very, very little, but I am curious to see where the conversation takes us.
Absolutely. Well, mate, this might open up a new lane and a new avenue professionally for you as well. We never know. So fingers crossed. But let's not bury the lead, mate, because first of all, you met Ben Stiller. How was that?
It's so funny. We have pretty incredible opportunities to speak to the best athletes around the world. And a lot of it is basketball, but sometimes it varies outside of that. And you do get to a weird kind of spot where it's like, okay, this is my job. This is what we do. We are used to speaking to these millionaire athletes. Ben Stiller was one of those ones where it wasn't planned. So we were courtside in San Antonio for game 2 of the NBA Finals. And we had someone working on our team. Her name is Hayley Burns. She's actually a Kiwi, lived in Australia for a long time. But she was the star of the NBA Finals because basically she would run around and get whatever celebrity she could and bring them over while we were live. So we didn't know that we were getting Ben Stiller, and we kind of just turned around and he was standing there and jumping on our show. And it wasn't until after we finished the conversation that I was like, yeah, we can talk to the athletes, and that's awesome, and that is our job. But Ben Stiller, you talk about people that I never thought I would have a chance to chat to. So it was a thrill. It was exciting, man. The New York Knicks, they brought all the celebrities out.
Yeah, man, and a historic series too. I'm not going to profess to be any sort of basketball expert, but sort of kept an eye on it in the periphery for sure. What was it like to see a drought like that broken sort of live in person, mate?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. The way that the city sort of got behind their team. Clearly, they were desperate for this New York Knicks team to win. It had been 53 years since they'd won a championship, and really it had been a large part of the 53 years was pure misery. And I know you got boxing fans and fighting fans that listen to your podcast, but they will have their own team, and hopefully their team has had a chance to win. But if you do support a team that has had a miserable few decades, the New York Knicks are absolutely one of those. So it was chaos the way they shut down the area outside Madison Square Garden. Getting into the games was a challenge in itself. The president was at one of the games, which was just a complete sideshow in a different way. So it was an experience. The Knicks look like they're going to be good for a while, and maybe they'll win another title, but there will only be one time where they had that desperation to get the first one after so long. So, yeah, it was truly, I've been lucky to be at 6 NBA finals now, but that was that was unique in its own way, and I think it would be hard to top.
Yeah, well, I thought just from looking for a farm, mate, you did a fantastic job covering it. And always love being able to watch like a massive primetime American sport and hear an Aussie voice, mate. So it was super awesome. So congratulations on all your efforts there, mate. But as you mentioned, this is a bit of a departure from the norm, getting on a boxing pod, which is kind of weird. But I guess just to sort of explain a little bit and explain to the people who are listening and watching too, I feel like the NBL and the rise of the NBL has just been such an unbelievable like parallel path with sort of how boxing has kind of risen in Australia the last 10 or so years. They have very differently, and I feel like, you know, boxing is kind of going backwards a little bit now, which is another one of the reasons I'm so excited to have this conversation and learn more from you, Kane. But it all happened around about the same time as I can imagine. So the catalyst for sort of the rise of boxing in Australia, at least in my opinion and many people I've spoken to, was when Manny Pacquiao came out to fight Jeff Horn, sold out Suncorp Stadium in 2017. You probably heard the names or a little bit familiar with the story at the time. And it really set the sport off. It ignited it. And the boxers and the industry itself is still benefiting from that sort of catalyst all these years later. And conversely, I feel like the NBL was maybe a little bit earlier than that, if I'm right, and I'd love to go over the sort of timeline with you in as much detail as you could possibly give us, Kane. I'll leave that up to you, but I feel like the decline was kind of like through 2010 to 2015. Would that sort of be right with the NBL? I guess before we talk about the rise, we kind of have to go backwards and talk about the demise, I guess, if that's the right word. But would my time frame sort of be correct there?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've lived in the US for sort of 8 of the last 10 years. I came back in 2020 when the NBA shut down for a little bit. But when I first moved over to the US, it was 2017. So not to get too far ahead of it. But even at that point, you're exactly right. There was the golden generation, I guess, of basketball in the 90s when you had Andrew Gaze and Leonard Copeland, the Melbourne Tigers teams that were winning championships. Then even the Sydney Kings early in the 2000s won 3 in a row. And then there wasn't a great broadcast deal. The financial setup of the league continued to tank. They were trying to find someone that had the ownership and really try and find their place in Australian basketball. And it was that period of time where, to be honest, it looked like the league was on the verge of folding completely, which when you think about where it is right now is hard to believe. But they did need someone to, as I pointed to, a leader to buy into that and try and get the league back on its feet again. And that happened around 2014, 2015 with Larry Kesselman, who came in and first bought into some ownership of the Melbourne Tigers that turned into Melbourne United, and then eventually the whole league after that. So it was pretty dark times, to the point where when I moved over to the US and I had a real interest in sports media, but the reason I chose basketball is because I didn't think there were too many Australians that were covering basketball. There were none in the US at the time. So that's the path I went down. But even at that point, sort of 2016, 2017, there were no eyeballs on the NBL in the US. In Australia, there were very few eyeballs on the league as well. So it was in a really rough space. And that's why it's so hard to believe now that the success that it is continues to rise. And even internationally, the respect the league has, which is fun to see as an Aussie.
Yeah, and you touched on something there, and the parallel to boxing, it's just like everything you're saying there is sort of, and I won't bore you with the boxing details, but the regular watchers and listeners will sort of be able to make those parallels that I've made too. But you mentioned there that the broadcast deal wasn't great around that time. Can you remember sort of the specifics around that?
Yeah, well, 2015 was when things started to turn. So Larry Kesselman came in and he was able to organize a broadcast deal to continue to get the games on TV. He was able to save one or two of the franchises that were really struggling, including Brisbane, and bring them back to the league. But a lot of it is, particularly with pay TV in Australia, and even to this point, and I know boxing is a lot the same. You got to rely on pay TV to broadcast the sports, because getting it on free to air is another challenge altogether. So first for basketball, it was Fox Sports, and they were on Fox Sports for a very, very long time. And then ESPN came to the party and became the key broadcaster, I'm going to say, around 2019, 2020. And they've had it ever since and still have it to this day now. But it's been a long process to even get on free to air. They now have, they've been on Channel 10 the last couple of years for one game a week, I believe it is. Not across all that, living over here. But now they've just struck a deal with Channel 9 to have some games there. And certainly I know that boxing and MMA has been a sport that probably for the most part has been on pay TV, but certainly for basketball, the idea of getting it on free to air has been so big for the sport, and just having that secured money to actually put into the league and make sure that you can at least get eyeballs on it has been so big for basketball, because historically and to this day, it's one of the most participated sports in from youth around the country. So that there's no reason that there shouldn't be a strong domestic league.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. And so much, and I feel like so many issues with sports and really just anything, if we just broaden it to anything, it's visibility. You know, if people can see something, if you can get more eyeballs on something, like I guess that's the essence of like what promotion is at its core. If you can get people to watch something and invest in it and make it easy for them as possible, well, then that's going to lean itself to growth. You know, like I feel like if it's business or like whatever your sort of field is, but especially in sports, like every sport in Australia should be looking at the AFL, the NRL and cricket and going, okay, what are they doing and how do we get there? There should be that strive, you know, and without knowing the intimate details like you do about the NBL, Kane, I feel like season after season in the last decade, they've been doing that, you know, and boxing's kind of been going the other way. You mentioned the reliance on pay TV. Well, you know, boxing's a stubborn mistress, and they've taken it one step further. They're on a, you have to have a subscription to Foxtel to watch the majority of the fights or apps or whatever it may be. Then they're going to charge you an extra $60 or $70 on top of that per event for per event pay-per-views, you know? So it's like when I speak to people walking down the street, you know, what are you up to this weekend? Oh, actually, you know, Tim Zoo's fighting. Oh, who's he? Oh, how come you've never heard of him? He's one of our most famous, you know, boxers at the moment. You know, it will cost me $70 to watch all of his fights. Why would I do that? You know, throughout the year, it's hundreds of dollars. So that financial barrier is such a big one to like visibility and growth. And I've had people I've been talking about this for years on the pod, and I'm sorry to ramble. I'll get back to the question in a second, Kate, but people are like, you're just being a tight ass, support the sport with your dollars. I'm like, well, I've been doing that for 20 years. And all the sport's done is ask me for more. So it's like this model just doesn't work. And this is where I sort of got the idea kicking around in my head with the NBL. They're doing the opposite of that. And where even a guy like me that only probably watches, you know, half a game a week, if I'm being totally honest, maybe a full game at best, but I'll certainly check the highlights and catch up on nothing but net Aussie hoops. But you know, the NBL have just done such an unbelievable job of that. Did you know much about Larry Kesselman at the time when he was sort of rumored or buying the league? Like, was he a known figure in the basketball world? Like, what were you thinking when you heard of this character coming in, you know, on the white knight coming in to save this whole industry? Was you skeptical?
No, well, I mean, he's always been a basketball lover. Again, going back to those 90s days with those Melbourne Tigers teams. But the NBL, I used to watch it in the 90s back again when it was on Channel 10. And I would remember, you know, someone like Stephen Quartermain commentating these games, who I always knew as a footy guy, but was first introduced to him commentating the NBL. And then I had a huge gap in even taking any interest in the NBL. I was watching the NBA and certainly involved in what they were doing before I moved over here. So I was even late to the party when the NBL started to straighten up a little bit, because as I pointed to, there were so many reasons not to support the league, because the standard was bad. It wasn't financially supported. It was going to be hard to find the games. And I think when it comes to broadcasting, to your point, whether there's challenges in some sports, you know, I don't know, but there are limitations, and they're trying to, you know, fund the sport. So I understand there's challenges with pay-per-view events and those types of things, but it's no different to doing a podcast like you are here, where you've done episodes and you have a time frame and you've done it for years. Now you put it on YouTube, and people need to have a routine that they can trust that the product is going to be there. And the big thing for me for the NBL was that fans began to realize that games are going to be there. They are accessible. They know when to watch the games. And the cool thing about basketball that separates it from some other sports in Australia is the fact you can watch it in the middle of the week. And if you are someone like me that wants to watch sport and it's a random Tuesday night, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do tonight? And I can turn it on. I see I've got Melbourne, Sydney playing in the NBL. It gives people an option to watch sport that wasn't really there. So I think that the NBL has done such a great job of ensuring that there is accessibility to watch it on TV. And then the other part of it is they really lent into the family element of basketball, and Larry and his whole team at the NBL have done a great job. If you do get to go to an NBL game, you'll notice it straight away. And it is different to other sports. The amount of kids that are there, the amount of families that are there, it's a really fun environment, really, to watch world-class sports. So they have certainly targeted those markets as well, and made it a really, I think for the most part, friendly atmosphere for people to go and enjoy.
That's unbelievable, Kane. I wrote down a couple of notes on Microsoft Word last night, and that was one of them, because I went to the NBL, the junior basketball club I played for. One of the kids' dads was like a coach bus driver. So through the sort of mid to late 90s, all us kids, it'd be like a rotation thing. He'd take a whole busload of families from each different age group and stuff every week. So went to tons of those Melbourne Tigers games and all that sort of thing. And I hadn't gone for years and years. And my first NBL game since literally being a kid was not this most recent season, the one before. Do you remember that game where Chris Goulding shot 6 threes in like 2.5 minutes?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah,
I was at that game.
To be fair, he's done it a few times. The guy is an absolute maniac. But yeah, I mean, and I'm sure you watched that and thought, oh well, this is a pretty fun environment to be at. The crowd would have been, pretty hot, and overall, I'm curious what you thought, but they do put on a good show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that was my point. That was the game against Melbourne and Perth, but Bryce Cotton wasn't playing. But anyway, and I took my nephew, and for some reason he goes for Perth. We live in Melbourne. I don't know why, but he loves Bryce Cotton, so he's spewing he wasn't playing. But the thing that blew me away, it was a Saturday night. It was dark. Was you just said it. We walk inside the family environment. It felt unbelievably safe. There were kids everywhere. And it felt like it was back in the 90s. Kids were just running around, like playing with their little basketballs, the kind of off the chain, so to speak, off the leash, I should say. And that moment, like when Goulding went on that run, that was like the arena was so loud. It was a top 3 sporting moment I've ever experienced live in my life in any sport. It was unbelievable. And I was just sitting back on the train when we were going home. I'm thinking, I'm not even, I play basketball, I like basketball, but I'm not like a hardcore basketball fan. I'm thinking that was one of the best sporting experiences I've literally ever had on every level. You could take kids, you could take mates. It was safe, it was fast, there was never a dull moment. The in-arena experience was unbelievable. And, I was thinking back to the old days of 2010 to 2014, whatever it may be. Like, that is such a stark rise in a decade, or it was even less then, a year and a half ago, whatever it was. Credit to Larry Kesselman. The rise is unbelievable. Were you confident at all that the league could become what it has become now?
Not really. And again, I moved to the US to cover the NBA because at the time, it wasn't really a thing to cover the NBL. And I kind of kept an eye on it. And we have just finished, or the NBA Summer League is ongoing now as we have this conversation in Vegas. And that was an early time where I was sort of having conversations with people from Australian basketball. So Las Vegas Summer League is essentially the NBA finishes, and then a lot of players that either just drafted get to play for their teams in Las Vegas, or players from all over the world will come in, and coaches from all over the world, and play in this tournament and try and earn a contract in the NBA. And just year on year, the level of international people, and certainly Australians that were in Vegas, that were either playing, coaching, trying to find a job in basketball, just continued to grow. And so it was when I came back to Australia in 2019, was the first time I went to cover the league. And I was really surprised the change that the league had made. And I don't know whether the league would agree with me with this, but my perspective of what I saw from the league was, back in the day, there used to be a lot of, well, we're the NBL, we just need to get big names, whatever big names. It doesn't matter if they're a little bit washed up, 37, 38. We just want big names because we want people to come to these games of basketball. And there's been a real change with the league into, in my opinion, again, being okay with the fact that the NBL is what it is. It's going to be a developmental league for players that can legitimately actually get to the NBA. And I don't really believe that was ever the case if you go back 2 years ago. So now the league, it markets itself as the second best league in the world. That's up for debate. I'm not sure whether there's a lot of people in America that would see it that way, but they do have a lot of respect for it. So instead of getting just big names to come to the league, they're getting young players out of college, whether they're Australians, whether they're international players, and they're presenting them with an opportunity to have eyeballs on the game, play at a very high standard that is respected and give themselves a chance to either make a stack of cash in the NBA or make a stack of cash in Europe. So I think that a big pivot, again, broadcast matters, families matter for getting people to buy tickets. But I think the league realized, let's not worry about the names. People, if they come in, they want to watch good basketball, and we will create our own homegrown stars, whether they're Australian or internationals, because the fans will fall in love with what they do on the court. And I think it's been a really smart change for the league, understanding who they are and leaning into that a little bit more.
Oh, man, I absolutely love that, Kane. And I wish boxing would do that. You know, boxing's a sport that just, especially in Australia, obviously when I say boxing, I'm referring to Australian boxing, but it just can't get out of its own way, you know, and it just has this stubborn fascination or stubborn, whatever it is, stubbornness to like, we'll use Tim Tszyu as the example, and I'm kind of being a bit harsh here, but it sort of explains it. It's like, if you turn on Foxtel, all you're going to see is, oh, Tim Tszyu, he's fighting in 2 weeks. You know, he's fighting in two. Oh, Tim Tszyu this, Tim Tszyu that. Oh, Tim Tszyu's doing this. Oh my God, Tim Tszyu changed trainer. Tim Tszyu. How about tell us about the undercard? You know, like and I had a conversation with a guy as well at work, and, you know, what do you do on the weekend? Oh, watching this fight, never heard of him, all this sort of stuff. And I was sort of having a little bit of a deeper conversation with him, like why he doesn't follow it. You know, 30-year-old plumber, loves cricket and footy, goes to the pub on the weekend, seems like a classic boxing sort of viewer, right in that sort of demographic, you know. And he goes, mate, why would I take a sport seriously that doesn't take itself seriously? And I was like, wow, that's actually like pretty profound. And conversely, like I feel like the NBL, as you just outlined there, Kane, does that exactly. It knows what it is. It sells the sport, not individual players. There seems to be more longevity to that. It breeds fandom. It gets people coming back season on season, year on year. Was that something that the NBL had to change when Larry Kesselman sort of took over? Was it always like that? Did part of the demise, did they get away from that kind of philosophy, or what sort of went on there?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened before that in terms of the financials and why the league was struggling so much. But I know when Larry initially bought into it, based on all the reports, he bought into around 51% of the league, and the valuation of the league at that point, I believe, was around 7 or 8 million for that 50% share. Teams are being sold for 4 times that now. So that just shows the growth. And that's only in 11 years. I just think, and Australia in general, and again, I can't compare it to boxing because there's not a specific season, and it's not the perfect, you know, comparison to have. But I do think for sports, and we're in the World Cup right now, so there's a lot of chat about A-League, another sport that I don't know a lot about, but in Football Australia, and how they can capitalize on the success that they've had. For basketball, they've just done a great job of capitalizing on the popularity of kids that are playing the game. The rise of NBA players that we have now from Australia in the league, so we pretty much have double digits year on year. And these guys are megastars for young kids that love the game. They want to buy the jerseys. They want to watch them. So they basically understood that if we can present stars to the fans, they will enjoy watching them. They will go to the NBA, and then we will still have another crop. So anytime you watch the NBL now, you're going to have 4 or 5 guys that could have either touched the NBA or could potentially touch the NBA moving forward. And the other thing that Australia has that you can't ever get away from is the fact that these international players, they look at the NBL, and when we speak to them here in the US, they love it. They love coming to Australia because it's a pretty easy sell. You go and leave an American winter and go live in Australia for the summer, play only half the games that you would play in the NBA while you're trying to get up there, make good money, and hang out on the beaches wherever you are in Australia. So it's to me, it's not easy to do it, and it's not taking anything away from the leadership of the league that's been able to put all this together. But it should be an easy sell, and they've been able to build it to this point. But I don't know how that sits with you in terms of how you do that with boxing. Obviously, with the seasons, that type of stuff. I'm not sure if you can lean into that or you see anything that could work there.
Yeah, there are those built-in structural things that are going to hold boxing back in that respect, you know. Like one of the famous quotes is, you know, I forget who it was, some American journalist back in the day said, you know, boxing doesn't take itself like a season does in other sports. It's like every event's a going out of business sale, and then they just start again on the next one, which is so like True, it really is. But I feel like Australia is and we've spoken sort of about the uniqueness of Australia with the NBL. My sort of frustrations with Australian boxing is I feel like we are such a unique market that we can make changes here. We are small enough where, I haven't seen the books or the accounts or whatever, but I feel like we're small enough where it's not going to take a gigantic investment. We've already got a national pay TV broadcaster heavily invested who's now owned by DAZN. DAZN is globally has a lot of international promoters and has invested heavily in boxing. So to me, looking from afar, it's like, well, clearly there is investment here. I just think it's that reliance on the pay-per-view model, which I think is just killing the sport in its growth potential. Another famous Hall of Famer, actually, Steve Farhood, said, boxing is the only sport in the world where it takes its biggest and best events and shows them to the least amount of people. Like, that just seems counterintuitive, but it just won't change for whatever reason. And I feel like Australia is just like the NBL did, experimented, tried some new stuff, and now they're thriving. I feel like boxing can do the same. So, Australia is such a unique market, and funnily enough as well, the parallels are unbelievable. You mentioned about some American players coming to Australia and enjoying their time over here. On that Tim Tszyu show in 2 weeks, we've got 3 American former world champions coming out that. Foxtel are trying to sell us as the greatest card ever assembled on Australian soil. I would need to talk to a historian to confirm that. But, to have 3 relatively recent world champions competing on our shores in 2 weeks, and they seem to be pretty pumped to come over. It seems like another parallel with basketball as well, which is great to see. But, I really feel like the biggest crux is that pay-per-view and the visibility in terms of the growth potential, where I feel like boxing's just absolutely shooting itself in the foot, unfortunately.
It's tough. It's expensive, I should say, to be a fan of sport right now. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
And now, whether it's, the other streaming services, Netflix and Amazon, who all do an outstanding job, but it is just asking more and more, particularly I would imagine, of a fan of boxing, where it is so heavily weighted to those big events. I know I was actually supposed to be in Vegas across the weekend, and they had the Conor McGregor fight, and I was already I was like, look, if I'm there, I'm going to try and find a way to go. And then I'm looking at the ticket price. I'm like, well, this isn't even in the realms of possibility of going. And in the end, if you paid money for that, you went home highly disappointed, And I think that's probably the danger of forking out $60-$70 for a pay-per-view event. There's a high chance that maybe you feel like you wasted your money, and that's a tough bargain. Once that happens once or twice, it's tough to keep asking people to pay that fee. And I obviously have no clue what the answer to get out of that is, but it again is an advantage that a season sport has, where if you're a fan of a team, they can lose a game, and that you're going to see them play in 3 more days, and it's going to be there, and that's certainly an advantage. I think that basketball probably has over boxing, I would assume.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that, yeah. But boxing is a hard sell, but it's so weird. You think back in the day, like TV ringside in the 60s, and I think maybe even into the early 70s, I'd have to check that. Boxing was up there with horse racing. They were gigantic sports, and I feel like, really the decline can be correlated directly with pay-per-view and subscription costs. Like when you put something in front of the most eyeballs, it has a chance to flourish and grow, which again, I just can't take my hat off enough to the NBL. I think they've done an absolutely amazing job. So we've sort of spoken about the decade, you couldn't even really call it a rebuild anymore. Like, they're built. The NBL as an organization. What do you see in the future? Like, I'm sure 10 years ago it was probably hard to imagine the level and the point they're at now. Kane, well, what can you see happening for them in the future? Is there more room for expansion, more growth? Like, what would you like to see, and what do you think you'll see?
They're in a really interesting spot at the moment, where the growth has been so large over the last 10 years, as we've discussed, that I think that it always becomes a challenging point of how much growth do you have and how quickly should you do it? So we've seen over the last couple of years where the last 6 years, we've already had 2 new teams come in. So Southeast Melbourne Phoenix were the first team to come in. That was 2019, 2020. and then the Tasmania Jack Jumpers a couple of years after that. And certainly the Tassie team has been unbelievable. That was a state that was desperate for a sports team. We know the AFL is trying to get that off the ground in the next couple of years.
Who would have thought the NBL would have beat them to it?
Yeah, I mean,
unbelievable.
Again, what they have been ahead of the curve in things like that. In Tasmania, where the AFL was fumbling, they were like, we want a team, we haven't been able to figure it out. So Larry's like, okay, no problem. Let me get this 5,000 seat arena. We can redevelop it. We'll have the team there. They got the right coach, and they won a championship within a couple of seasons of being in the league. I mean, it was an unbelievable storyline. There's waiting lists to get tickets to even go to these games. So they just did it the right way in terms of building that franchise. But now the league is in a good spot. But like most leagues, year on year, there are some teams that probably struggling a little bit. The league wants to expand. Larry has said that he wants 2 more teams in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think it's a really interesting time. I mean, how much is too much too quickly? They're talking about potentially the Gold Coast again. And we know historically the Gold Coast has been incredibly challenging to get support for professional sports franchises. I know in the AFL, obviously, have the Gold Coast Suns. The Rugby's had a team up there. They've had a Gold Coast team in the NBL before, and it didn't work out. Obviously, this is different ownership. So it's going to be really interesting to see how much they can continue to rise before maybe they bite off a little bit too much. I mean, I think based on what we've seen with the league and the ownership they have and the way it's run, that they've earned the belief that they're going to get it done and do it the right way. But it's certainly on that edge, I think, of 10 teams right now. You go to 12. How many is realistic for an Australian basketball league? I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, wow, that's so interesting. Well, considering the success they've had in the last decade, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. Again, I don't know the details. But
let me tell you, if they pull off a Gold Coast NBL franchise and they become successful and well-supported, then you can never doubt them again, because that feels like one of the biggest challenges in team sports in Australia. It's just there's so much going on there. I feel like most of the people that live there may have come from colder states and they're enjoying the lifestyle. So I just think there's a lot of challenges with the Gold Coast, but it would be cool if it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And one thing I wanted to touch on too is like the NBL broadcast and commentary and sort of the shoulder programming and all that type of thing, because I think that kind of in every sport that stuff plays such an important role. I think you do an absolutely fantastic job, Kane, at all that type of thing. So I think you're the perfect guy for me to sort of have this conversation with. But at least from your knowledge, was there a particular directive from the NBL media arm or something to present the sport in a particular way, or did it just kind of develop this way organically? Like, what was sort of the genesis on the broadcast side?
It's really interesting because when I was in the US and then COVID shut the NBA down, I moved back to Australia. And at that point in time, I had never worked in TV. I had no real idea of working in TV. It wasn't something that I was desperate to do. And I got a call from the NBL, or an email at the time, and it was saying, look, we're doing basically a halftime NBL show. It's going to be very casual. There'll be you and a couple of guys and girls sitting on these couches, casual clothes, just chatting hoops. Like fans, you'll bring some news to the table from whatever you're working on at the time. And that was my first introduction to the NBL broadcast. And it was my first taste of the way they were going about it. And at the time, they were certainly trying to change a little bit of the way it was presented, and certainly educational, but certainly fun. Perhaps a younger slant on who was on the broadcast as well. And while the NBL broadcasts are on ESPN, it is produced by another company. I'm not 100% sure who it is right now. So we don't really work with those people too closely. In fact, I don't really work with the NBL at all in terms of the show we do. We're certainly very separate to that at ESPN over here in the States. But they put together, I think, a very watchable program. They've got obviously some huge names like the legend Andrew Gaze and Leonard Copeland, 2 guys that I've worked with a lot, and they've been so good to me since I've worked in broadcast, and I love those guys. The play-by-play stuff is outstanding. They've got former pro athletes like Kelsey Brown who dominates the broadcast as well. So they've certainly put a lot of time and education into the style of broadcast they want. they want the commentators to tell a lot of stories during the game and try and engage the audience that way. So it's certainly something that is well thought out from what I can see from the outside. And it's certainly not just get names and hopefully people will listen. They certainly have a style they're trying to achieve, and I think for the most part it's normally fun, and you get a good laugh out of watching the games, which I think is again I think the tone the NBL is looking for as a league.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and especially for a guy like me that's not watching every single game. But you said they're educational. I'm always learning something. Like the terminology's changed since I was a kid playing basketball. Like we never called it a pick and roll back then. So I'm still take it to the rack. I'm like, what the hell is this rack thing? But so I'm learning all these new things all the time when I'm watching. But just as a comparison, like I think the NBL broadcast is amazing. Everything they do, shoulder programming, your stuff included, Kane, absolutely. But like, boxing has this reliance on using rugby as a crutch, leaning on rugby just constantly. Like there's rugby league journalists on the pay-per-view desk openers and in between fights, and you'll have like a former world champion like Barry Michael, a legend of Australian boxing, Australian Boxing Hall of Famer, sitting on the desk, and the fight will end and they'll go straight to the rugby journalist for his opinion first, which is just like absolutely just ill-conceived garbage, but it's just this how's this one time, this isn't relevant to anything, but it is insane. One of these rugby guys was late to the fights because he was at the Rugby Hall of Fame. So they literally shot a video package and showed it on a boxing pay-per-view of him flying in a helicopter and like rolling out the red carpet, and then him walking into the event late, like Elvis Presley style, and like celebrating this rugby guy. And then he just got on and spewed complete garbage that was totally unfactual about the sport that he doesn't even know anything about. It's insane. Anyway, but again, another reason why the NBL, and maybe that guy, that plumber years ago who said, why would I take a sport seriously that doesn't take itself seriously? I think that's a perfect example, like the NBL is putting Andrew Gaze and Leonard Copeland and yourself and people who are diehard basketball fans, people who have worked in the industry, people who know it intimately, people who have competed and won championships in the league, professional broadcasters and commentators. John Casey's amazing. He's been doing it for 30 years or whatever it may be. I think all that stuff matters for the sport to grow and be taken seriously and be put on the pedestal up with, cricket and the AFL and rugby league and all that type of stuff, whereas boxing just doesn't do that. So it's been amazing to see the growth of even just the broadcast side of the NBL too.
Yeah, they do an outstanding job. It's funny you mentioned John Casey. So I've worked with him a little bit. He's a great man. And we were actually at a WNBA game in Connecticut a couple of years ago now. It must have been 2023. And I didn't know so much about the background of his love for boxing and that scene as well. And I remember we're sitting in this basketball arena in Connecticut, and he just starts rattling off I guess there was a banner in this stadium, and it said Fight of the Year 1991 or whatever. And he ended up walking me through the play-by-play of everything that happened in this fight. So I don't know. John Casey, I guess he's a massive boxing guy as well, but he's an encyclopedia of knowledge. And probably for people, I'm not sure how old you are, but certainly people of my vintage, he was a voice that we've grown up with in basketball and various sports as well, and a true pro. And I think to your point that really matters. I mean, I come on and I host, and back in the day I used to do some reporting, but ultimately my job is to talk to the guys that have done it and have been there and the stars of the game, and hopefully put them in a position to tell great stories, and hopefully when we do that we're able to do so. But at the end, I'm a sports fan, so it's a thrill for me to chat to those guys as it would be you when you speak to athletes and different people from your sport. That's I'll always be a fan first and foremost. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, unbelievable NBL broadcasts. They've done a great job. Well, thanks very much for providing so much more context to the rise of the NBL, Kane. I really appreciate it, mate. I've sort of tried to make these points over the years on the podcast, but I'm trying to make points where I don't actually know the details, or I've never actually spoken to anyone. It's just kind of what I think I've picked up, but certainly confirmed a lot of things and taught me a lot of things too, mate. So I really appreciate it. But while I've got you, Kate, it would be remiss of me not to be able to just throw a few general basketball questions at you, if that's okay, mate, if we got a little bit more time.
Let's do it.
But, mate, really something I'm super excited about, and we saw this with Matty Dellavedova a couple of years ago, but Joe Ingles is back in the NBL. What are you expecting from Joe, mate? And do you think that'll I think it's going to be a pretty decent impact for at least opening night. But are you excited?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think going back to the point where I said the NBL kind of changed the way they approached bringing older players or whatever, that doesn't necessarily relate to the Australians, because I think it's great for Australian basketball fans that have invested in the careers of these guys emotionally or whatever it may be, to see them play in their local city. And Joe Ingles is a legend. He's a legend of the sport, and obviously a part of the bronze medal at the Olympics, and great NBA teams for a decade as well. So what he will bring to the table, he even said himself that he's not 100% sure. He hasn't played a lot in the last 2 years, but he's one of the smartest basketball players that Australia's ever produced. And I think at the very least, it is going to be really, really fun for fans in Melbourne and all across Australia. I'm sure you'll see lots of Joe Ingles jerseys in the crowd. And he's one of the best media performers that we've got as well. The man is hilarious. He will take down media whenever he gets the chance. If they're asking a silly question, so you're always going to be sharp when you're chatting to Joe. But anytime, like you mentioned Dellavedova, but Andrew Bogut came back quite a few years ago as well. And when you get the true legends of the sport coming back and playing, I think it's a really, really cool thing. And again, the fact the NBL has presented themselves as a place these guys want to finish up, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and they'll have to make sure that they really mic courtside really well, so we can get some bit of Joe Ingles.
Get the beep ready. That's all I'll say. Get the beep ready. There might be some colourful language coming through, which I personally appreciate, but it's a family product, so we've got to be careful.
That's true. But mate, also has Melbourne got a coach yet?
Yeah, so they do. So Jacob Chance, they just hired him now. Really quickly, I don't know how many basketball fans are listening to this, but Jacob Chance was actually with the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA. So he was coaching their G League team, their developmental team, but he was with the team during the NBA Finals. So we had a chance to catch up with him a number of times in San Antonio, and he was weighing up what the possibility was be. He's a young man. He's only in his early to mid 30s, so it's a pretty unbelievable coaching career that he's got. But they signed him to come in, so he's one of the highest touted basketball minds when it comes to young Australians. So it's a pretty big signing to get him back. He signed for 4 years, I believe. So, for Melbourne United, first time they've had to have a new coach for a while. But Jacob Chance is the guy, and I think fans would be pretty excited about that.
Yeah, well, there you go. I certainly am now that I know. Thanks, Kane. But, mate, let's talk about Bryce. We mentioned him earlier. I didn't get to see him play in that game a couple of years ago, whatever it was. But, mate, he made his debut for the Boomers, finally. Pretty good, dude. Not against the greatest opposition with respect. But what did you make of it? Like, obviously, I was anticipating his debut, but I can't imagine I was anticipating it anywhere near as much as a guy like yourself. But what did you make from those games against Guam and the Philippines?
Well, firstly, so Bryce Cotton is an American who has played in the NBL for around a decade now, but he's a 6-time NBA. He's led the scoring in the league 8 times. Like, the guys, there is only one person that can rival his career. It's Andrew Gay. So that's up for people to decide whichever way they want to go there. But that's it. That's how good the guy is. And he had obviously built his family in Australia. So Australia was home to him. So for a number of years, he was battling, trying to get his Australian passport. It went on forever and ever. It looked like it wasn't going to happen. He moved from Perth to the Adelaide 36ers. They were able to get this passport done. So essentially now you can have one naturalized player play for the national team. He's shaping up to be that guy. Matisse Thybulle is another player that had played in the Tokyo Olympics going back a few years ago now. But I was happy for the family. I mean, he's got kids. He's been trying to get this passport for a long time. He's contributed so much to the game in terms of revenue for the league and fans coming. And like you said, kids going in their cotton jersey. So I was happy for the family, first of all. But secondly, he's just a damn good basketball player. And we need as many of them as we can get to at least be in the mix for the World Cup, which is next year. He's, as I said, a top 2 scorer the league has ever seen. I think he's going to be in the mix for the World Cup and then Olympics next year. He's not really slowing down. So I was pumped as an Aussie. We try to be unbiased unless it's Australia playing, so I was pretty pumped to see him out there. I hope he's on the team next year because I think he has the skill set that we probably lack a little bit in terms of the straight up scoring.
Yeah, yeah. And the Boomers seem to be in a bit of a transition at the moment now with some of the older names possibly exiting the team, maybe not coming back for that World Cup campaign, as you mentioned, Kane. What do you make of sort of the new crop? Obviously, we saw, Dyson Daniels and Josh Giddey at the last Olympics, Jock Landale, these type of guys. But now we've got like the Tyrese Proctors, who I'll put my hand up, I was very unfamiliar with until these most recent games against Guam and the Philippines. And I saw a bit of your stuff. You guys are pretty excited about him, so I'm keen to get your thoughts on that. But in particular, the new wave of the Boomers coming through, how do you think they sort of stack up with the old guard and sort of moving forward throughout the next couple of campaigns?
Yeah, it'll be interesting next year. It feels like maybe they'll still be a little bit young, depending on which one of the veterans they keep around. But the team is going to be stacked. I actually look ahead. So the Olympics in LA in 2028 is going to be exciting, particularly for us that are in the US, and we'll hopefully be able to get out there and try and support some of the athletes. But 2032 is in Brisbane. And when you think about Josh Giddey, Dyson Daniels, who you pointed to, and then Johnny Furphy, who is with the Indiana Pacers in the NBA. Proctor, as you pointed to. Alex Condon is a really exciting big man. He's still in college at Florida. You could go down the list. So the only question for the team next year will be how many of the young guys do you want to take all at once? They're clearly going to want to be competitive. They will be competitive, but the World Cup is the hardest competition, in my opinion, to win. The Olympics, there's only 12 teams. In the World Cup, there's 32 teams. So it's a bit more of a juggernaut of a schedule, even though the Olympics probably gets more of the shine internationally. So, Australian basketball, in terms of the top level talent, whether it's college, NBL, NBA, it's never been in a position like this. So I don't have to pick the team. We did pick our team. We put it on social media, and as is the case, there was some pretty sharp feedback and some disagreement with some of our selections, and that's the fun of it. You don't have to agree with us. We are just presenting what we think, and we'll see what comes down. The good news is we don't have to make the decision.
Yeah, good problem to have too when you got to leave really talented, great players on the bench too. So, and mate, I didn't know too much about Adam Caporn taking over the reins from Brian Goorjian. Do you feel like he's going to have a similar sort of style implemented on the team that Goorjian had? Should we expect wholesale change? I guess the games against Guam and Philippines were hard to judge in sort of that respect, at least for me and my knowledge. But what are you expecting to see from the Boomers in terms of like gameplay and style compared to the Goorjian era?
Yeah, I think it will be a relatively similar. So Adam Caporn is again a younger guy, but I believe he's only in his early 40s, but he's had about 15 years of experience as a coach. He's coached at the college level. He was at the Australian Institute of Sport for a long time, the NBA Global Academy. So he was close with guys like Giddey and Daniels and guys that have been around that. And he's gone to the NBA. He's now currently with the Washington Wizards. But he's also been with the national team the last few major tournaments. So I think ultimately that the team is going to be Josh Giddey. He's going to run the offense. They're going to play defense because that's what Australian teams always do. They're going to be scrappy. But they do have more high-level talent than they've had in the past in terms of athleticism, size, and ability to move the ball. So I think they'll play a team-style basketball. The one thing Australia doesn't have that the rest of the world seems to be having is at right now, currently, we don't have an MVP-level superstar at the NBA level. It's the one thing we're missing. We are leaning more on the group of 6 or 7 guys to win you games rather than one guy like Serbia with Nikola Jokic or Giannis with Greece or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with Canada. And we found that out a little bit at the last Olympics. But he's been around it for a long time. He was running a lot of the huddles at the last Olympics as well. So I think he's got a pretty good grasp on the talent he has. And Australia always bats above its average in most sports. They certainly do it in basketball, so they should be pretty competitive.
Yeah, awesome. That's so exciting, mate. And we've got the Opals World Cup. Is that late this year or next year? Is it somewhere around there?
It's coming up very soon. It's in Berlin, in Germany. And the girls, I mean, they are a medal threat every time they play. The team is absolutely stacked as well. So the biggest threat, obviously, is the USA. They haven't been able to get over that hurdle in recent times or for a long time, really. But they'll be in the mix. They're definitely a medal chance, and that'll be on ESPN. So if if you feel like watching some high level basketball in late August, early September, you'll be able to catch that as well. And as I said, their expectations are gold, but certainly the podium.
Yeah, man, and one of the most consistently high performing national programs we've got in any sport. Like the Opals have been unbelievable. We talk about the transition with the Boomers, but the transition with the Opals, I feel like they might be in a little bit of that time now of like Jay Melbourne and Izzy Borley is coming through, and like Lauren Jackson's unbelievable final career game. Like what a moment! Like that was unbelievable. What did you make of Lauren Jackson doing that? She shot 32 in her last ever game or something, didn't she? Was that the last World Cup?
It was. So she was at the Olympics last year. Didn't play a lot. Or 2024 it was now, but 2022 was the comeback in Sydney where she had the 30 piece in the bronze medal game against Canada. And it was just ridiculous. There was no, I don't know how well she was moving before or after the game, but during the game she was able to do it. Just one of the most ridiculous competitors in Australian sport over the course of her career, and so it was a pretty remarkable story. But obviously, she's not going to be at this team at this World Cup. But yeah, some of the names you mentioned, and Ezzy McBegor is another one who is only 24 years of age, but she's been playing in the team for 6 years now. It feels like she should be much older than that. So the women are the same as the men in terms of the development they have and just the sheer number of players that are playing in the WNBA at a high level. Alana Smith is the co-defensive player of the year last year in the WNBA. So, yeah, it's good basketball. And certainly those tournaments, again, are the best. And it's fun when we win. And we should be good. So we like to jump on that bandwagon, no doubt.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the first time I came across you on air, Kane, was maybe 2 World Cups ago. Did you work I think maybe the Men's World Cup? I can't remember. I can't remember when it was. But anyway, the point being, it was a fantastic broadcast team. It was all star-studded, and you were there. But yeah, mate, I thought for me, like you were the MVP of the broadcast team. Not that anyone else was bad or anything like that, but I thought you were phenomenal on air. And the reason I don't say this because you accepted my request to come on the pod, I say this to explain why the reason I reached out to you I think you're one of the best young broadcasters in any sport, mate. If you moved away from basketball or diversified into other sports, any other sport would be lucky to have you, mate. So what's coming up for you? Obviously, you've got heaps of stuff going on with ESPN. Is there any boxes still left unchecked for you in sort of your career, mate? Like what can we hope to see from you moving forward?
Yeah, so many, to be honest. As I sort of pointed to it, it wasn't a life goal of mine to do the TV or stuff, which is feels a little different to a lot of people that do it. So I really am so new to it. I've only done it for a couple of years, so I about 4 years now since I first did it. So I feel like I'm just at the start of learning and that kind of stuff. But I'm trying to get out of basketball a little bit. I'll never leave basketball. I will always be a basketball broadcast, but I want to try different things and have that challenge a little bit more. You do other sports at all, and it's definitely a different feeling in the stomach before you're about to go live, and you're like, damn, I just don't want to sound stupid. So it's there's so many different things, and there's opportunities here in the US to do stuff on the US side of things with ESPN as well, which would be a great challenge. So it's just fun. I said it at the start. I'm a sports fan, so I appreciate you saying what you said, but I also I'm lucky, man. The people I get to talk to and really all I'm doing is sitting there and asking them questions and getting them to tell stories and give insight. It's pretty awesome because I always say if I wasn't doing it on TV, I'd be sitting on the couch watching the shows and having the same questions. So I'm in a pretty fortunate position, particularly over here at ESPN. It's a pretty unbelievable place to work. So yeah, plenty left. Hopefully just getting started. We'll see what the bosses say. They might send me packing home at any day. Every day is we don't take it for granted.
That's good. I don't think they're listening to this, mate. So we're safe. We can say whatever we want. But and how much time do you get to spend home these days? Do you come back regularly, or is it sporadic? Like, do you look forward to your time back home, or?
Yeah, I love it. It's a little challenging in the NBA season, but every year around August, September, I try and get back for at least a couple of weeks. I am I'm from Geelong, So I'm a big Geelong fan in the footy. So normally September is when I try and come home and watch them in the finals. I don't know about this year; they're looking a little shaky at this point in time. But September's normally when it works out to get back for a couple of weeks. And I love it, mate. I always say I don't know how long I'll be over here, but Australia's the best, man. I wish I could come back more than I do, but you can't have it all. I've got it pretty good over here as well, so I can't complain. But I definitely don't go a year without coming back. That's for sure.
Oh, that's awesome, mate. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this, Kane. We'll finish it up there, mate. I feel like you've provided some unbelievable context, and certainly I learned a lot of things, and I'm sure a lot of boxing people listening or watching this episode will be much more informed and maybe have a little bit more ammunition that we can throw back against the boxing power brokers to maybe follow the lead of the NBL and in multiple different facets. But we'll see how we go. But no, mate, I was thrilled when you responded to a random DM of mine. I was hopeful, but I wasn't sort of sure if it would even make it to you. And the fact that you got back to me so quickly is a credit to you, mate. So, and you've by far been one of the easiest people I've ever had to try and logistically organise anything with. It was an absolute pleasure, mate, and super professional, which I shouldn't be surprised by. But thank you so much, mate. Wish you all the best personally and professionally for the coming future, mate. And who knows, maybe one day there could be another boxing style pod collaboration down the track. If any disastrous turns in the boxing world happen and the NBL keeps spiking, I might have to get you back on for a part 2.
No, I would be down for that. And the reason I responded so quickly, it tells you I don't have much going on in my life outside of work. So I was like, let's chat. Let's make sure this happened. And if any of your listeners, by the way, who are boxing fans have lasted this long into the podcast, shout out to them as well. I appreciate that. There was probably a lot of basketball conversation that you're like, I don't know what this guy's talking about, but I appreciate it. Get to an NBL game and maybe next time I'm in Australia, we can as an interested outsider, maybe we can get to a boxing event as well and see what they got, see what the experience is like. I would love to do that. Something I haven't done.
For sure, mate. Absolutely. We'll put that on the bucket list, no doubt. I'll keep your DM folder not too crowded, but maybe if an opportunity presents around finals times, one AFL season and something locally is happening, I'll hit you up, mate. But thank you again, Kane. Just stay on the line, mate, because it'll just take a minute or two to upload. But really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, mate.
All right, guys, and that was my chat with Kane Pitman. That was an absolute ton of fun in a very different type of episode, guys. As you would know if you listen to the last couple of pods, I've sort of hinted that this episode was coming up, and the little break in the schedule with not a ton going on sort of mid-July worked out perfect. And thank you again to Kane for giving me the time all the way from Connecticut, as we found out, the other side of the world. Now, as always, guys, the links to follow along with Kane's work, his social media handles on Instagram and Twitter are in the description of this episode, and also his ESPN author page is in the description of this episode also, so you can click along and follow along with Kane's great work. Guys, I had so much fun doing that. Kane couldn't have been easier to organize this with. He couldn't have been more receptive to what I can only imagine sounded like a bit of a crazy idea that I presented him with. And to his credit, he got back to me every single time super quickly. He was super professional. A great example of, like, if anyone was to reach out to me, I would want to deal with them the way that Kane dealt with me. He's a top bloke on and off recording, and an absolute professional, great speaker, a great presenter. I think he does great in his roles, multiple different roles. I think he's an asset to the sport. I just can't say enough nice things about Kane, and I very much thank him for his time. And who knows, maybe, as I hinted at towards the end of that chat, maybe there could possibly be another weird niche Aussie boxing pod / basketball crossover down the track at some stage. But yeah, shout out to Kane. That was definitely a podcast highlight for me, for sure. That was so much fun. So guys, again, a very different episode, but I think an important one, because as I think I've said on multiple episodes for probably years now, I just think the NBL is just such an unbelievable example of something that wasn't working And then someone, in this case, as Kane told us, Larry Kesselman, and I'm sure there was a team around him as well. So, Larry and the team will say, came in and they bought a business, they bought a league that was struggling, that was on its deathbed, that wasn't doing well, and they changed things. And within a decade, they turned it into arguably a top 5 league in the world. The rise of the NBL is absolutely phenomenal. I'd always knew that in terms of general bullet points, but I never knew the specifics like Kane was able to provide and the actual timeline. And now I'm even more amazed by the job they've done. I feel like this is going to be a documentary in years down the track, and Aussie sports fans in generations are going to be reading and watching and listening to people tell stories about how the NBL was rebuilt and turned into this absolute thriving competition. It's amazing. And purely from my selfish boxing related point of view, I just think there's so many lessons that boxing can learn. Like I said it in the pod, boxing's so stubborn. Everyone is so resistant to change. They don't want to try anything, change and adaptation and those type of things. It's like, Anthony Mundine and Danny Green made tons of money on pay-per-view. That's what we're going to do. Why? Times change. People change. Audiences change. Everything changes. The NBL is a perfect example of that. And the thing that really struck home with the way Kane outlined the whole timeline and the state of the NBL and what it was and what it is now and how it became that was visibility is so unbelievably important for growth. And of course we want boxing to grow. It used to be huge, now it's not. I never thought about this, but I sort of realized it in the moment, the direct correlation between pay-per-view and or subscription costs and the cost and the hassle and the difficulty of watching the sport and getting more eyeballs on it has really gone in a decline. I mentioned it with Jeff Horn, and it was the catalyst for this rise in this current, let's be real, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, boxing's in a great place. It's certainly been in worse places. I want to make that absolutely abundantly clear. But there's such growth potential. We can see it. This sport could be so much bigger in this country. It really could. And that can only benefit everyone involved, especially the fighters. The fighters and their teams, the trainers, the cutmen, the managers, all those type of guys, the people that are on the front lines in Aussie boxing. If the sport could grow, attract bigger sponsors, they have a bigger name, they're fighting on bigger platforms, more people know them. It can only improve. Why isn't the Ashes every 2 years pay-per-view? They would make tons of money. Why isn't the AFL Grand Final pay-per-view? Why isn't round 17 of the NRL pay-per-view? Why? Why doesn't the NBL have pay-per-view games for finals? Why don't other sports do pay-per-view? If pay-per-view is the only way that sports can be profitable, why is boxing the only one that does it? No one's ever been able to answer me that question. All I ever hear is, no, that's the only way it can work. It can't work any other way. Why? I don't understand why it can't. Can we get someone to try? I mean, the only ones that I've seen really try in Australian boxing are Ace Boxing. When they got on the 7 series with their, I forget what it's called. Was it called the Premier Boxing Series? I think it was. PBS, yeah, Premier Boxing Series, I believe. And before COVID, unfortunately, when Dean Lonergan started the National Boxing Series, which was a fantastic initiative. And unfortunately, I think COVID completely kiboshed that, and as it did many other industries and ideas and iterations around the world, I'm sure, which is such a shame and bad timing. But that was a fantastic idea. Obviously, okay, bad timing with COVID, that ended. Why can't something like that happen again? No Limit used to do free shows on Fox. And again, I'm not coming at this from being a tight ass, which I absolutely am. I'm coming at it more from a point of visibility and growth potential. If you can put a fantastic, and the NBL is a great example of this, again, as we just learned, speaking to Kane. If you can put a fantastic product in front of eyeballs, people will watch it and it will grow. It will. There's no doubt in my mind that boxing can grow. But it's got to be put in front of eyeballs. And, I think No Limit and Foxtel got the free shows they were doing wrong. They weren't putting premium talent on those shows. They probably couldn't afford to. I don't know what their financial setup is. I really don't. But I believe if, sacrificing a 1, 2, or 3 pay-per-view level, and I say that in inverted commas, pay-per-view level Australian shows, and put them on free TV, or put them on a platform that gets more eyeballs with much less of a financial barrier to get those eyeballs on them, I believe you will see some growth the next time you want to charge for one. Not that you should, but they will. We know how they roll. I really think they can work. I really think they should try it. And if they try it and it doesn't work, I will sit back and commend them for trying it. Okay, we asked a question, we ran an experiment, the experiment did not work. Okay, go back to your old way. But at least we know. It's like politics, Well, let's not get political, but, the politicians make these rules and implement these laws and all this stuff. And people go, what the hell is going on here? Why have you done that? Oh, it's because of this. Is it? I don't know. I don't like it when things aren't explained to me. That's why, frustration is born in the unknown. The things and I'm sure you guys are all the same listening now, the things I get the most frustrated about are the things I don't understand. And the things that I don't understand is because they're not explained to me. And if they are explained to me, maybe, I don't have the mental capacity to understand them, but at least then that's on me. But if you don't explain it to me, that's on you. I feel like that's a total fair stance to take. So yeah, I really feel like, sorry, I'm getting a little bit frustrated. I really believe boxing has a gigantic growth potential, and having that chat with Kane today has only just reiterated it even more to me, that we have a massive, massive opportunity in this country. Look, is it all doom and gloom with Australian boxing? No, it absolutely is not. Is it in a great place? It's in the best place I've ever seen it in, on all fronts. Absolutely. The talent coming through, the broadcast, which I have a huge problem with, in terms of the visibility of it, and I said the lack of growth and the potential for growth and that type of thing. But the industry itself is as healthy as I've ever seen it since, the early 2000s, outside of the Green Mundine days. But we can't deny that the sport is skewing exclusively back to a pay-per-view model, and it has over the last couple of years. I remember on the maybe not the last time I had Lyndon Hosking on, the time before that, I just added it up. Just added up the number of shows No Limit have done each year and how many of them were pay-per-view. And over the course of 3 or 4 years, it was all pay-per-view. They were doing less free shows, they were doing less events, and they were doing more on pay-per-view. Everything's pay-per-view. How is the sport going to attract new eyeballs and fans and grow if people, and especially the cost of living crisis, people don't have these $70 to pay, And I firmly believe if Foxtel or No Limit, they tell us every pay-per-view they ever done has been an absolute home run success. That's what they tell us. But they never tell us what the number is. Why don't they tell us what the number is? If it's so unbelievably, gigantically fantastic, why not tell us? In other markets, we know, in America and the UK, the numbers always come out for pay-per-views. Why don't they come out in Australia? I think they don't come out because they're not that good. I've worked it out years ago, and this will change, and I'm not good at math, so take this for what you will, but I believe that if we took the gold standard in America for pay-per-view buys is 1 million. If they can get 1 million buys, it's an absolute home run. Everyone's killed it. So I worked it out to a percentage of population. So in Australia, as a percentage of population, as 1 million is to the American population, in Australia, it works out to be about 70,000. I don't know, tell me, email, throw some tweets at me, whatever. When do you reckon the last time an Australian pay-per-view got 70,000 buys? That number seems absolutely gigantic. Outside of the Green Mundine heydays, I don't think it's probably ever happened. But again, I'm only guessing because they won't tell us. Again, that breeds frustration. But anyway, okay, guys, there's the rant. Thank you again to Kane for coming on. And yeah, as I pointed out in the chat too, the NBL is a fantastic live product. Kane said it at the end there also. Get along to a game if you're a general sports fan as well, if you want to open your eyes a little bit more to something outside of boxing. But we are biased boxing fans, so we will stick within our bubble, I'm sure. But guys, so I have got a couple of texts exchanged with someone for next week, for early next week, to do a no limit on pay-per-view, funnily enough. Tim Zhu, Errol Spence Jr., Jamal Charlo, Cole Mazudia, Liam Wilson, Cool Boy Steph Fulton, Paulo Akuzos on an awesome fight with that guy Tejeda. I didn't write this down. And Callum Peters is fighting someone Carlos Acton from Argentina. We've also got Ahmed Redder and Paul Fleming. Gee whiz, man. I've potted them about pay-per-view, but that's a great card. I'm really looking forward to it. Outside of maybe the obvious mismatch, which we may have a suspicion what I'm referring to. But, geez, God, that Paulo Akuzo fight's going to be good. I can't wait for that. Excited for Cool Boy Steph and Liam Wilson. This is going to be good. I can't wait. So definitely want to get on early next week and break down that card in full, as well as probably recap the Tasman show with Max McIntyre in his first headline position, and talk about everything else going on in the boxing world. Get much more back to regular programming as per usual, guys. So that will be the plan for next week. Again, I've had some text message exchanges, nothing locked in yet, but irons are in the fire. So guys, if you want to get in contact with me, you can throw a tweet at me at delivery_man2. You can email the pod at tuscpod@gmail.com. That's tuskpod@gmail.com. Also got the Instagram page, guys, and the YouTube channel. They are both just at tuskpod. So guys, that was a big outro, but this was a different episode. So I felt like just expressing my thoughts because, speaking to Kane, it just got my... So I recorded this maybe 2 hours after we spoke. Oh, maybe a little bit longer. I can't remember. And it just had the wheels in my head turning for hours, like just thinking about everything he taught me about the NBL and let me know all the new information I was able to find out from him, and it just got me fired up to jump on for a bit of a hit out style outro, if that makes any sense. But anyway, guys, we're coming into 2 weeks away or so from another big Australian show, which is going to be a ton of fun, and we will talk about that next week, hopefully with someone on the pod. Yeah, can't say who, can't say when, can't say how. Irons are in the fire. We'll see how we go. I'm going to stop ranting. Guys, enjoy the fights, and I'll chat to you next time.
Road less travel may add up to change. Living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came.
Going all out.
I was living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came. I got the wake up call, laughing through the window frame.